Hello, everybody.
Good morning.
So we are just going to wait a few minutes and see who joins us. We've just tweeted out and emailed out the link to this webinar. So we're going to give people a little bit of time. Plenty of people here already, so welcome. Nice to see you.
Yeah, do say hello in the comments and let us know who you are and where you are. And
yeah, it would be it'd be
nice.
great to hear that actually. Rosie's already sent a message. Jakob, hi Jakob.
Are we going to see you, Keith?
Yeah, I suppose I could subject you to that. Let me stop screen sharing for a second. Got a lot of windows and things going on. That's kind of confusing. Hi, everyone. Hello.
It's complex, isn't it? You need lots of windows here, there, and everywhere to be able to make it work.
So I'm just going to drag this across, so I'm not constantly looking over to the side. And I'm going to grab the live chat window as well, just so I can keep one eye on that. I'm going to put that down there. Oh, cool. Lots of hellos.
Lots of people.
Super. 20 people viewing. This is great.
I do apologise if I'm looking away from the camera. It's just that I've got to look at the comments and things. So I've got lots of screens doing lots of things.
Yeah.
No, that's fine.
Hi, Pam. Hi, George. Yeah, great. So I guess we'll probably just start in a couple of minutes. I literally just was able to send out that email to the subscribers. So I'll give people a couple of minutes to get that email. And hopefully we'll get a few more people on board. So grab yourselves a quick cup of tea or something, or a biscuit if you want. I've got my cup of coffee here.
I have a glass of Vimto. In a Guinness glass, if you
nice.
really want some context.
Yeah, I like it.
Anyway.
So Mark's going to be presenting the slides, so he's got those up on his screen now.
Do I need to sort of present to all? How do I do that, Linda?
I think it must do it automatically, Mark, because it's not a kind of normal Hangout, you know. So yeah, just I guess one of the things to say is this is the first time we've tried a webinar, so there's a good chance we might run into a few little technical difficulties. We're gonna do our best to seem as professional as possible, but there's a chance we'll hit a few snags, but we'll hopefully get through them.
Yeah, every time you speak, the video does change to you, so I don't know if I can present this to everybody.
I see. I wonder if I have to do that.
Nah, maybe because you're the lead.
Yeah, I can present you. Yeah, so I'll do that, Mark, whenever we get started.
Yeah. Okay then.
Yeah, that's cool.
Oh, my guys at Wider here as well. Hello there.
Oh, excellent. It is nice to see so many people here.
Right, we get going.
Ease my nerves about Gutenberg. That's yeah. I think there's quite a few nerves, but we'll do our best.
Do you want to present me then, and we'll get going?
Yeah, should we get started?
Yep.
There you go, Mark. That should be you presented to everybody.
Looking good. Right, brilliant. Okay, so welcome to our Getting Ready for Gutenberg webinar. So I'll first of all just go through kind of what we're going to cover in this session, so you get an idea of like what we're going to do. Hopefully that slide's changed for you. So first of all, we're going to look at what is Gutenberg. So some of you may not know anything about it, and it's obviously a big change. So we're going to look at what actually is going to change. What is the project all about? If you're already familiar with it, then you'll obviously know a bit more about it. We're going to give you a demonstration. Keith is going to demonstrate actually how, when you've installed it, at the moment it's a plugin, but when you've installed it, what does it do, and how do you manage content with it? We're going to look at how it might affect your website. There's obviously going to have some effects. So what will happen, what might happen and then what can you do to make sure that your website is ready for Gutenberg when it lands in WordPress version 5 later this year. We're going to share some resources which we found quite useful, and obviously we want to let you guys ask some questions. We're not Gutenberg experts, but we've obviously had a go with it, so we'll try our best to get a good discussion going and then answer some of those questions. Hopefully this will be about an hour long, and do add your comments in the YouTube section on the chat.
Yeah, one thing to say about comments, just to jump in there, is that there is a little bit of a lag between the video, like what we're saying and what you're seeing, and so a bit of lag with comments. So we might miss things as we go. We do have Jonathan, who is part of our team, who is kind of monitoring comments and questions. So he's going to try to pull out some questions for us to answer, which we'll do towards the end.
Yeah, cool. So very briefly, just a bit about us. So we are High Rise Digital. We are specialist WordPress developers. So we purely focus on WordPress completely. We don't build anything that's not WordPress. And our focus tends to be on posts, what we call post small pre-enterprise businesses. So businesses that are perhaps got WordPress needs that are not sort of fulfilled with out-of-the-box solutions, but they're not sort of like the big enterprise companies at this point in time. So that's our focus. I've been working with WordPress for 12 years. Keith, just a little bit less.
Yeah.
We're a UK-based team. We're remote, so we don't have a fixed office, if you like. So Keith's down in Folkestone. I'm up in sunny Leyland today. It's very nice. And Jonathan, who is like a mystery man, he's not on this call, but he's in the background listening. He is in Peterborough. So we're kind of spread out along the country. And we love getting involved with the community. So we helped out organise WordCamps and meetups and obviously do stuff like this. So that's just a bit about us if you don't know who we are.
Yeah.
So let's get stuck in with what is Gutenberg. So if you're not familiar with this at all, it is a big change that's coming in WordPress version 5, which will be the next major release or the next major version of WordPress. We're currently on 4.9.4, I think. Yeah. So there's been a few sort of minor releases, but the next major version is version 5, and this project called Gutenberg will be embedded as part of that release.
So when's that release coming, Mark?
Good question. It's muted for spring of this year. I suspect it won't be quite that early. I suspect it'll be a little bit later than that, but certainly
they talked about April, didn't they?
Yeah, but certainly 2018. It looks like it's going to arrive in 2018. So what is Gutenberg? Well, it's an entirely new way to edit and add content in WordPress. It completely changes the edit screens that we're used to, where we add our titles and content and pick the categories that we want to add to posts and things. It's an entirely new screen, and it works in an entirely new way. We think it's probably a bit of a reaction to the popularity of those page builder plugins that you might have used, which allow you lots of control over the page content that you add, and possibly to some competitors like Squarespace and Wix that already have sort of different editing experiences that allow users to do different things. So that's what kind of Gutenberg is as such. So what I thought we'd do is point out this was a quote from Matt Mullenweg, who is the lead of WordPress, shall we say, and this is what he said about the Gutenberg project. So he says, the editor will endeavor to create a new page and post building experience that makes writing rich posts effortless and has blocks to make it easy what might today take shortcodes, custom HTML, or mystery meat embed discovery. So I think there's important points of this particular quote to sort of pick out. The first one, obviously, is that Gutenberg is an entirely new page and post building experience. So it will look very, very different from the WordPress that you're used to seeing at the moment. It's quite a big change. It's focused on adding rich posts content easily. So right now, if you want to add a form into a post, it's not that easy. There's different ways of doing it, and other plugins offer different solutions to it. So therefore, this whole Gutenberg is trying to make it so that rich posts can be edited easily. For example, adding posts with images and videos and maps and quotes and all that sort of stuff to make that more easy than what it currently is. You can do it, but there is obviously limitations and different ways of doing it. Everything in Gutenberg is based on the concept of a block. So a paragraph is a block. A heading would be a block, an image would be a block, a gallery would be a block, etc. Now that probably sounds a little bit strange, but when Keith does the demo in a minute, you'll probably get to understand what we mean by a block. So if that makes no sense to you at the moment, then don't worry, it will do hopefully shortly. And it's like a way of breaking up your website content into different types of modules, if you like, depending on what that content actually is. And those different modules, whether it be a title or a paragraph, etc., can be manipulated individually. So we can move the order around of those blocks. We can change where they're displayed, etc., quite easily. Whereas now it's a bit of a copy-paste job and cut it out of there and paste it in here. And that's quite hard to do if you've got custom code in that editing experience as well. And then the last point to look at was, in this quote, was that obviously at the moment, a lot of this rich posts that we have now is done in many, many different ways. So we have things called short codes, which is a little piece of text or in square brackets, and that gets kind of replaced with something else when you look at your website. You might actually have custom HTML, that's like the code inside the post editor, or what was termed mystery meat embed of Distrugger, which is lots of different types of ways to do the same thing. Everyone kind of has their own way of doing it, and that can be quite confusing for WordPress users because everyone does things differently. So that's what kind of going to be. So we're going to move on to a demo now.
Can I just kind of wind it back a little bit, Mark, just to cover a couple of things that I thought of while you were talking there. It's important to kind of, I think, note that Gutenberg is kind of a 3-stage process at the minute. So the kind of current focus is what they're calling the editor focus. So essentially, whenever you go to an edit post or edit page screen in your WordPress backend, they're kind of focusing on the content section. I don't really know how else to say it. Again, you'll see it in the demo in a minute, but actually, it's a kind of that's only the first stage. The second stage is to do with like customizations. So it's going to be more like styling and layout. And then the third stage, they talk about it like kind of like a site builder, page builder kind of thing. So it is not just going to be a change for the editor, although that's what the focus is at the minute. It's going to be basically a change in the way you manage WordPress websites as a whole. And I think Mark mentioned there like potential reaction to the kind of the page builder plugin scene, which was heavily adopted. So you know things like Divi, Visual Composer. You might be kind of aware of plugins like that allow that kind of drag and drop system in the back end, and you can add lots of different modules and basically style them as you want. And the kind of popularity of those, I think, is kind of one of the reasons why the Gutenberg project exists. So although this is just an editor phase, and what you see today on this demo, it's going to be taken a lot further down the line. So this is definitely something to kind of keep an eye on. It just stage one in a complete revolution for WordPress, really. So should we do it then? Should we do this demo?
Keith's going to show you what Gutenberg actually looks like and how it actually works.
Yeah, okay. So I'm just going to switch to me, and then I'm just going to organize my desktop here. Let's move that over there. Let's move this over here, and then post.
How do I stop screen sharing?
Okay. So if I go to my dashboard, okay, screen share.
I'm going to put my video on, Keith, while you do that. Can you do that?
Okay.
I've still got my screen, obviously, saying demo.
All right.
Okay. Do tell me, but I don't know how to do that.
Oh.
How do I stop my screen share?
Can you not do it?
Oh, like that. That's how you do it.
Yeah, I don't think I can do that. Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen now, guys. I'm hoping.
I can.
So I have set up a local WordPress installation at gutenberg.test. So that's just on my computer. It's not online or anything. Don't try to visit that URL. You won't see anything. Well, you might, but so that's just here locally. It's just running the default 2017 theme. As you can see, that I haven't added any posts. It's literally a kind of fresh install. So switching to the dashboard, a familiar WordPress backend. The only thing that's changed is that I've installed the Gutenberg plugin. So you can see down here, that's the only kind of hint that there's something going on, is that there's a little Gutenberg link down at the bottom there.
It's probably just worth mentioning that as the Gutenberg project is developing and it's being built as a WordPress plugin, so that users can do what we're doing now and log in and test it and find bugs and errors and things. Absolutely. And obviously, once the project's finished, it will then become part of WordPress, so you won't need the Gutenberg plugin.
Yeah.
So what Keith's done is just installed the plugin at the moment.
Yeah. So yeah, and you install that just like any normal plugin. Just go to plugins, add new, search for Gutenberg. I'll show you a kind of screenshot that in a bit. So I'm going to add a new post, and I'm going to see what that looks like. So I'm just going to click add new, and voila. So you can now see, hopefully you can notice that things are different. This isn't the post edit screen that you are probably familiar with. Bit of a styling change, and then we've got this kind of big kind of white space here just saying, fill me with content. And that is what we're going to attempt to do. I'm going to just start adding some dummy content. So it's asking me to add a title. There's no kind of obvious kind of user interface here. So they've really gone for this kind of minimal, clean user interface. That is probably a matter of preference, personal preference, whether you kind of like that style or not. I kind of find it okay. It's pretty modern. I think people that are kind of more traditional might be a little bit confused about it, but I think this is the way it's going to be. So add a title. So
I think I'm not so keen on it, to be honest.
Yeah, Mark's not so keen on this kind of interface, and I think for good reason, really. And then it asked me to write my story. So I click in here, not exactly sure what's going on, but I know I can just start like typing text. So type some text in here, and I'm just going to hit return. Okay, so it looks like it's opened a new paragraph, and you can see like I'm kind of switching between these elements, and hopefully you can start to see, oh, that's kind of annoying, the concept of blocks. So I've got a title here, I've got some text here, and I've got a kind of new text block. So I'm just going to put new paragraph. I'm not overly original with my copywriting, but if I hover over these, each individual paragraph here has its own kind of UI controls. Now that's something different, and what's happening is that each of these elements, these three elements, is a block. So we need to kind of learn what blocks are, and to do that, I think the best way is to show you what available blocks there are. So there's a couple of ways to add a new block. You can see this kind of plus icon. Hover over that, you can add a new block. Hover in between blocks, you can add a new block. And in the top left corner, there's an ever-present add block icon at the top there. So I'm just going to add one underneath, and it brings up this pop-up. We've got some things that we should be, sort of familiar with, but we'll go through some of them. The first tab here, well, the very first thing we see is search for a block. So that's obviously probably not massively useful until you're a bit more familiar with this system. But you can see from the box here that we've got things like paragraphs, headings. Let's just try if I want to add a list. So there we go. We've got a list, for example. So it kind of filters that. This first tab just shows the recent ones that I've used. So I was playing about with this earlier, and I was playing with galleries and images and YouTube embeds and things like that. So that's what this initial tab is. If I click on blocks, I'm going to get kind of the whole list of blocks, and these are sorted into various categories. The first one being common blocks. Let's just quickly scan through that. Audio, I haven't played with that yet, but I think that's probably fairly self-explanatory. That's going to be some kind of audio player. There's a cover image, probably also kind of known as a hero image, which I'm going to show you, but it's basically a large image with overlaid text. Image galleries, headings, single images, lists, paragraph, quotes, subheads, videos. Then we've got these formatting blocks. So different ways to kind of format your text. We can add code. Classic, this is going to be an interesting one, which I'll show you a little bit later. It's the classic editor, which is essentially what you're used to. So we can add a block that is basically like the WordPress editor that you're used to today. We can add some custom HTML in, pull quotes, tables. I'm not entirely sure what verse is. I think verse maintains line breaks and things. So if you're writing like poetry and things like that, it's useful for that. Then we've got a layout blocks section. I'm not too keen on the terminology here personally, because I don't see a button as a layout item. So I don't know if that's something that's going to change further down the line or whatever. Separator, I can possibly see that as layout. Text columns, yeah, maybe. And then scrolling a bit further down, we've got some widgets. So presumably we'll be able to add more widgets to that. So those are the blocks that it gives you. Then we've also got embeds. So this is things like if you want to embed a tweet, if you want to embed a YouTube video, something from Instagram or Facebook. So it's actually got loads and loads of options here. And this is pretty cool. So it's an easy way to embed from all of these services that you're already familiar with. So there's like a TED Talk or whatever.
Keith, I assume they have to be embed supported.
I assume so. Yeah.
I'm
not entirely sure. Yeah.
Maybe that's a list of all the embed supported services currently, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. And then saved. There's no save blocks, so we're going to come to that in a minute. We will have a save block soon enough. So I'm going to just maybe show you a few more of these. I'm going to grab some dummy text and things and dummy images and just start dumping them in here. So let's kind of copy that, paste that in. I'm going to copy and paste 2 paragraphs and see what happens. Is it going to turn it into 2 blocks or is it going to be 1 block? There you go, look at that. Automatically adds it as 2 different blocks. We've got a kind of dead block there. So this is part of the UI that you're going to need to be familiar with, is this like kind of triple dot, which just means kind of options or settings. If I click on that, it gives me kind of, options for that particular block. I want to get rid of that one, and I can't. I'm sure that there was a delete block, which is kind of interesting. If I just hit backspace, so that one disappears. There definitely is a delete block.
There was a delete block, definitely.
There is one. It mustn't be on that particular block type. Okay, so we've got some paragraphs. We've got a title. Now I want to add an image. So I could either go into blocks and go to image. It's there in recent, or I could search. Let's add an image in there. And this is kind of sort of familiar in terms of there's an upload, there's add from media library. Pretty sure I've added some stuff already. Look at that, added some lovely images. So I'm going to add an image in there. I can write a caption. So is that sunrise or sunset, do you think? I'm going to go sunrise.
I think it's a sunset.
Cool. Let's add another block type below. So I'm just going to plus in here. Let's go for a gallery this time. We've already done the surfing one, so I'm going to add those 3 images. Create new gallery. Insert gallery. Cool.
Can you link that image somewhere, Keith?
Good question.
Oh yeah, there's a link.
There's a link. Yeah. So if I click on the block here, I get some kind of alignment and kind of editing options up at the top. And I also obviously get this. So there's remove. So that wasn't on the paragraph block for some reason. I'm not exactly sure why. This image block gives us some resizing controls, which I was playing with earlier, and they actually are a little bit buggy. I'm just going to leave it at kind of 100% for now.
What's the little image icon in the top left with the drop down? Yeah.
So you can
right.
certain blocks you can transform quite easily into other blocks. So for example, like a paragraph, I think, let me just click on the paragraph one. I think you'll be able to transform that into a quote or a heading. Yeah. So if they're kind of similar-ish, so if it's text, it can be different types of text. If it's images, it can be different types of images. So, it's potentially pretty useful. So we covered kind of adding blocks. Let me just click on that again, see what kind of more options there are.
Block advanced settings on the right, is it?
Yeah. So on the right-hand sidebar here, it's a bit different probably to what you're familiar with. So we've got two tabs. There's document and block. So document is your stuff you're probably familiar with. So we've got categories and tags in here. We've got featured images. Excerpt has gone into the sidebar now rather than kind of part of the main body. Like visibility and the published status and all that, we're kind of familiar with all that. But we've also got this kind of block tab. So if I click on a block now, it's going to give me kind of even more options. This is probably better for things like gallery. Yeah. So we've got like column settings, image crops, and things like that. So it's kind of we've got kind of settings in 3 different places, and I'm sure that's I'm sure there's probably good reasons for that, and they're going to be grouped kind of sensibly. But we've got this kind of setting along the top. We've got our kind of triple dot settings, and then we've got our block settings on the right hand side where we can add like classes and all sorts. So if I click on different things, so there's like image size, kind of familiar with that kind of stuff. This is kind of cool. This is the paragraph one. So if I want to add a drop cap, I can. Controversial font size. I personally wouldn't want it in there, but we can change the font size if we want. All the control that you could possibly need to ruin a design. You've also got background color, text color, alignment, and things for paragraphs. So yeah, lots of control. Different types of blocks have different settings, different options. So that's that kind of the main kind of blocks. I don't know, Mark, do you think it's worth demoing like a couple of the other block types, or do you think that's kind of enough just to get the gist?
Yeah, I think it's probably kind of enough to get the gist.
Yeah. So one thing I did want to show you though is reusable blocks. I'm trying to think of a good. Let's use like a quote. So if I type, I'm going to add a quote. I'm going to pretend that I lorem ipsum. I'm really not feeling original today, am I?
We see a lot of questions as well in the channel.
That's good. Yeah, guys, we will come to questions. We're going to leave lots of time at the end to talk about things. So yeah, Jonathan's going to be keeping an eye on those and pulling out the questions. So I've set up this quote, and this quote, someone has said this thing one time, and it probably isn't going to change over and over again. So, and we might want to reuse it on different pages. So, say like it's a client quote or something like that, and you want to use it on multiple case studies or something. I don't know. But we've got this convert to reusable block. So I'm just going to click that, and it tells me it's untitled. Now, how do I title it? That doesn't work. I'm going to assume that it's edit. So person quote, save that. So obviously, let's just try adding it here. I'm just going to search for it. That's cool. There it is, person quote. But it's also in saved. Now, this is something I think they need to change. I'm not sure if they're going to, but saved for me should be renamed reusable because that's what it's called everywhere else in the UI. But I'm just going to put it in there, and look, exactly the same quote. And the cool thing about this is I can more text. Save. Ooh, look, there it is, more text. And the even cooler thing is if I add a new post, that is also available to me on a new post or a new page. And if you change it on one post or page, it changes across all of them. So that's all.
Bit of a technical question. We won't know the answer. I wonder where that saves it to.
Yeah, that is a very, very good question. I don't know the answer.
But probably not this. But
yeah, So one more thing I want to show you, just one of the main parts of this UI is the up and down arrow. So I guess that's one of the main things about Gutenberg, is that when you're treating things in blocks like this, it is in theory easier to kind of manipulate in terms of like moving things around. And I think whenever we move to kind of the kind of page builder focus, that's going to kind of come into its own. It's not drag and drop, which I think a lot of people would rather it was, because like you potentially have to click up a whole load of times, you know, if something's right at the bottom.
I've heard that might be coming though, drag and drop at some point.
Yeah, I'm sure it will be. So that's how you can move blocks about. Something else that actually I won't demo to you, but it is reasonably clever if you copy and paste a whole load of like text or HTML or whatever at converting what you've pasted into blocks. Obviously, it can't handle every single use case, but it's reasonably good at that, which is pretty cool. One last thing to show you as part of the demo, unless Mark can think of anything else, or unless any questions have come up that, Jonathan, if you can just post a message to me if there's any particular things I should demo now. I can always come back to the demo later.
Yeah, we probably will.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to show you was the kind of HTML editor, and this is a bit odd. So one of the options here is edit as HTML. So if I click that, you can just see it's like a paragraph tag. That's fine. So what that allows us to do is we can add kind of classes in here. If we have like a highlight class, for example, I should spell it right. We can add that in there. Then you get this. So it says the block appears to have modified externally. Well, what does externally mean? Because I just did it, so I'm not sure what that means. Overwrite the external changes or convert. I actually don't really know what all of these options do. Well, I kind of do now, but yeah. I think whenever you first see those, it's like, what does that even mean? What does classic mean? I don't know what that means. Edit as HTML, that's fine. So it turns it to an HTML block, I'm assuming, and then it just stays as HTML and kind of loses its block interface. Overwrite, what is being overwritten? I'm not sure what that one actually means. So I think they could do a bit to improve the UI here. It seems kind of a bit scary, like that kind of exclamation mark and stuff. It's like, what's going on? So if I convert to classic, that's actually going to give me kind of what we're used to. So that this is like a classic WordPress content editor with the kind of kitchen sink button and all. So that's what it's done there. It's converted it to that. So yeah, I just wanted to show you that. And then also on the same kind of lines, top right corner here, there's another triple dot, and you can switch the whole page to a code editor. Like so.
That's kind of the same as like when you flip between visual and text now, I guess, isn't it?
Exactly. But as you've already seen, like editing this stuff is kind of fraught with a little bit of danger. So I'm not too sure how they're going to handle this going forward. But they're giving you the option, which is good, I guess. But yeah, I think they could possibly make the UI for this a little bit clearer.
A bit danger.
Yeah. So are there any questions in particular, or should we just come back?
Let's come back to questions. We've got lots of questions, which is good.
Yeah,
I think we'll kind of go through those, but I think let's just finish off what we were.
Should I switch back to you then, Mark?
Yes, please. Do I have to present? I guess I have to present.
I'm presenting you.
You are presenting
being presented.
All right, cool.
Look sharp.
Are my slides up though? Is that?
No, your slides aren't up. No, you need to do your screen share. Yeah. Sorry.
Right, that's better. Right, okay, so that's the demo out of the way. Let's move on. So I guess the next question you might have is, how is this going to affect your WordPress site? So when this actually lands in WordPress version 5 and you kind of click update, what's going to happen? And that's a good question. So let's have a look at some of the things that we've come up with to do with this sort of what's going to happen. So essentially, I suppose we can say that if we do nothing, if we actually just update our website and we don't have anything in place, what's actually going to happen if we do nothing? So obviously you'll get the new editing experience that Keith has just demonstrated. So your posts and your pages will use that interface. So if you already got posts and pages on your website, then they're going to remain as they are unless you go in and edit them. So they'll still display on the front end. They'll still look like the post was when you had it before. If you go and edit that post, then you're going to get this different interface. And from our experiments, what's happened is that Keith just demonstrated what's called the classic block there. So if you go in and edit an existing post, it becomes one classic block, and all of the content is inside that one block. So it's kind of okay, because you can then go in and edit that again, or you could then decide, well, actually, let's split it up into the new Gutenberg blocks. But it kind of doesn't appear to break, which is good. If you've got custom post types on your websites, which a lot of us have, so you might have a post type for case studies or portfolio, etc., then by default they are going to use the Gutenberg editor. And I know that's a lot of scary for a lot of people, because our post types are perhaps the one place where we don't use the standard WordPress editor as it is now. We might use lots of meta boxes for different ways of adding content to the page, something like advanced custom fields to give you more control over that. And what's going to happen to those? We'll probably come to that with the questions, I think, because there's quite a lot of them on that. But custom post types do have the option to sort of turn off Gutenberg. There's several ways that they can do that when they get declared, but that would have to be obviously retrofitted to your code. So it's going to, you'd have to go back and add a line of code in to make that happen. But by default, they will use Gutenberg unless you've specifically stated when you wrote that to add that post type that it wouldn't. So then currently you have the option to choose between classic and Gutenberg editors. So when
I didn't demo that, Mark. I probably should have.
Yeah. Perhaps come back to that afterwards. But when you add a post, the add new button has got a little arrow next to it, and you can say, well, I want to add this with the classic, or I want to add this with the Gutenberg. Now, again, whether that will stay or not when Gutenberg actually is integrated into core, we don't know. That might just be here now because if people testing it, they want to be able to do both. I don't know. And then obviously there is the issue of things that might break if you do nothing, because the whole page screen has changed. So if you heavily have an editing experience that relies on the WordPress page looking like it does now, then obviously that's going to change. So things are going to not be there anymore. Things are going to be in different places. So it might break that editing experience. So that's just something to watch out for. So that's kind of, if you do nothing, that's might what happen. And when we were doing some tests this morning and yesterday, it was actually a lot better than I thought. Like your posts didn't break. You kind of still had your content there and stuff. We didn't sort of heavily test it on sites that have got lots of meta boxes for different editing experiences, but for general content, it was fine, and it worked quite well actually between switching between the two. Yeah,
there were some formatting kind of issues. So, for example, in one kind of little test, I added a what do they call it? It's not a hero. They call it like a cover image, and the cover image didn't have any margin, like bottom margin by default. So whatever the block that was underneath it just kind of butted right up against the bottom of it. So
yeah,
there's a few things like that little quirks.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I say, it's not going to be perfect, and it is still in development, I guess. So
yeah,
hopefully these little bugs and things will be fixed.
Yeah,
or sorted out, hopefully.
Yeah.
So if obviously you're in this situation whereby you have your WordPress site, you've got all your content and everything, what can you actually do to get your site ready for Gutenberg when it actually lands? So what we've kind of come up with a list here of like how we think is probably the best way to prepare for when this actually lands. And I think the most important thing is just to test and test and test. So if you don't have like a staging site set up with your website so that you can just test out changes and things, and get that sorted out, get that set up, and install the plugin that we've just demonstrated and see what happens. It might be that everything's fine, and therefore that's good. Or it might be that you find these things that are broken, and then you know at least in advance that that's what you're going to have to fix, and giving yourself some time to do it. There are one or two Gutenberg ready themes that are out there, so it may be that you want to change your theme and have one that's more optimized for using Gutenberg. As I said, there's one or two out there. There's not that many because it's quite new, but it does appear that the main thing with your theme is it kind of needs to be full width, rather than having like the traditional sidebar on, because some of those blocks particularly like the cover image block. It works if it's got a sidebar, but it doesn't really work as you'd expect it to, I think.
Yeah, I think most of it, Mark. I was pleasantly surprised how it does work. I really should have shown the front end. We'll do that when we come to the end of the presentation, everyone.
Yeah.
I will show you what the front end output of what I was editing is.
Yeah.
I was pleasantly surprised because actually what happened is it disabled the options that would confuse things if it's not full screen. So like, for example, images, if you've got a full screen theme, it says, do you want this image to be like full width? Whereas it kind of knew that I was in a situation where that wasn't available. And so it didn't give me those options. So that was I thought that was handled reasonably well.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
And then obviously after you've tested the site, then you might need to find a developer to get your site ready. It depends what you've got on your site, etc.
I think it depends how customized your build is.
It does, yeah. If you've got a fairly standard default WordPress, then you're probably going to be fine, really. If you've got something a bit more integrated, that's different, then you probably need to certainly test it and make sure that things work. And if they don't, then you might need to have some changes made, obviously.
Yeah.
But one of the options is, and the last point on this slide, is that you can actually opt out of this completely. Now, whether you should be doing that long term, then that's another discussion. I'd probably say no. You probably want to be moving in the direction that Gutenberg is, because that's where WordPress is going. But in the short term, at least, you can opt out by installing a plugin that is in the WordPress repository called Classic Editor. I think we've got that on the next slide. There it is. So this is just a search of the WordPress plugin repository for Gutenberg, and you can see that the actual Gutenberg plugin is the top left one. So if you want to have a go with this, then that's how you'd install Gutenberg itself. But the one in the middle there is called Classic Editor, and that will essentially disable Gutenberg so that you can just have things the way they were. And that might be an interim solution for many people who have had a test site, they've found out that things just don't quite work as they want, and they want to make sure that they can still upgrade to WordPress version 5, but they want to keep their old Classic Editor going. That's like, when I say Classic Editor, I'm kind of meaning the normal post-editing screen that we have now. It does require a little bit of setup, does that plugin? So it would be really good if it was just install and that's it. But there is a settings screen with a few checkboxes that you need to click on. So that's just something to note, really.
Yeah.
But it is there, and it is an option for those that are just not quite ready to move to this new editing experience yet, which I think is obviously helpful. So we're just going to share some resources, really. It's stuff online that we found that it might be worth you looking at if you're obviously interested in this, looking at getting more information. So the first one is Human Made. So they are a WordPress development company they're all over the world, actually.
Yeah.
And they have written a white paper. So if you haven't read this white paper, the URL is on the screen, and we'll put this out on the YouTube description, I think, and we'll send it out an email to everybody.
Yeah.
It's a really good white paper. It kind of outlines some of the stuff we've been talking about today, and it goes into a bit more detail about how you might be getting ready and stuff. So well worth the read. If you've not read that, then I would highly recommend go and download it and read it. It's probably a 15-20 minute read or something like that, but it's certainly worth looking at. Then obviously there's the Gutenberg page on the WordPress.org website. So there's a whole page on here which sort of explains the theory behind it and how it's going to work, etc. And again, worth a read and having a look at that. So that's at WordPress.org/Gutenberg. And the Gutenberg only has one T, because I always want to put two T's in it. I don't know why. But that's just a side issue. So that's a Gutenberg page on WordPress.org. Then there is a really good talk. In fact, there's probably quite a few actually on WordPress TV. If you're not familiar with WordPress TV, it's where a lot of the videos from the WordCamps and meetups and things are put online so we can all watch them. And this one is from Morten Rand Hendrickson, who is talking about the future of WordPress and Gutenberg and what's going to happen with WordPress in the future. So really well worth a watch. I don't know how long it is, but it's probably 40 minutes or so.
40 minutes.
Yeah, I think it was at WordCamp US, so they're usually about 40 minutes or so, the talks. But yeah, if you've not watched that, then have a watch of that. That's really useful to look at.
Yeah.
We have got a mailing list if you want to join that, where we're going to keep people updated and about the sort of issues with this and anything that's useful, we think is useful. So feel free to join that. It's just highrise.digital/subscribe.
That particular mailing list is kind of targeted at WordPress website kind of owners. So people who manage websites rather than like a developer focused one. But there's probably still like useful for some developers as well. But yeah, we'll definitely be putting some more Gutenberg content out as things develop. So keep an eye on that.
Cool. And then Tom Noel, he's produced what's called Fruntenberg, which is really useful. So this is kind of a way for you to have a go with Gutenberg without having to install it. And it's kind of, you just go to fruntenberg.tomjn.com and you get an editing screen on the screen for you to have a play with. So you don't have to sort of install it on your own test site like Keith did. So that's probably worth a look. If you want to have a quick play with it, quick go with the Gutenberg editing experience and how it works, then
yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, it's really good. You can't like save your posts obviously because everyone else needs to sort of use that as well. But it's really good. Quick way of having a quick go with Gutenberg.
You can't upload images either, but I think pretty much everything else you can play with.
Presume there's some images in the library though that you can add and play with.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, good question. Yeah, not entirely sure.
So those are some resources that we think are probably useful. And then we're kind of going to come on to questions now. So
there are some really good questions. I just had to scan through the channel. I'm going to just go from the top. The ones that so Jonathan's been keeping an eye on that channel. He's done a really good job, and he's kind of pulled out some kind of key questions. You still presenting, Mark? I'll unpresent you. There you go. So yeah, I'll pull out some of the key ones. First one from No Face. I am currently working on a website which uses the REST API and a front-end form to create a post. Is there any info on how Gutenberg works with the REST API? I don't think we got that far, really, have we?
So Gutenberg uses the REST API.
Yeah.
It uses that to actually save and edit the content. So that's kind of how it works. How it works, I don't know. I'm not a REST API expert, but if you don't, if the REST API wasn't there, Gutenberg wouldn't be here. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it's going to work with like Mark says, it's going to work. It uses it, so it's going to work with it. It's probably going to work in a kind of similar-ish way to how you pull content from posts and pages. Interestingly, like the Gutenberg, the way it kind of saves data, there's a kind of couple of different ways it does that. So it'll be interesting to see how it does react with the REST API in that sense. Next question from Pam. Hi, Pam. She says, can't immediately see where metadata is added, but Keith may come to that, and I didn't. And it's very, very important. So this was one of our kind of big worries about the whole project, is that early on, there was this new editing screen, and it's like, well, where's all the metadata? Because most of the sites we build are like really customized, and we rely heavily on custom meta boxes to provide admin interfaces to make basically adding kind of custom content a lot easier. And there was no sign of meta boxes. And we're like, oh my goodness, where's it going to be? They do exist. We've tested it out. We've tested it out with advanced custom fields, which is the kind of seems to be the industry go-to meta box kind of creator these days, and it worked. It looked a bit different. Again, they've gone for a super minimal UI, which was a bit of a problem. Because currently, if you add like different metabox groups, each group has a title. So you could say this is the data for a person, this is the data for, I don't know, a location, and you could add a title to each of those. They all seem to kind of blur into one, which is a bit of a worry, but hopefully they'll get onto that. But I think, Mark, we were probably sort of pleasantly surprised that how well it was handled. We were really worried that we were going to install ACF and it just wasn't going to work, but it did.
Yeah, it seems to work. It just looks a bit, well, it's hard to manage because like you say, the titles of the boxes don't seem to exist. But it doesn't break, which is a good thing.
Yeah. I think the whole point in Gutenberg is that we're not going to need those things. Like,
yeah,
it's going to be part of those fields are going to be part of Gutenberg eventually, but obviously there's going to be a transition.
And in terms of where they are, Pam, they're at the bottom of the screen, so you kind of scroll right down underneath the editor, and they'll all sit at the bottom under there. Kind
of like where they are at the minute on most sites, like under the content. Really.
Yeah.
Rosie, immediate concern about paragraphs as blocks is how to merge paragraphs. I'm not sure what you mean by merge paragraphs. Do you understand that, Mark?
I think, well, each paragraph is a block, so you can't have two paragraphs in the same paragraph block, if that makes sense.
Which is a further question. Someone else has asked that further down. So you could do it by using the classic editor block.
Yeah, you could do that. If you turn your block into a classic block, then you could put multiple paragraphs in the same block.
So that because that is a concern for me too. Because you can imagine, like, I've got a block of text, which is multiple paragraphs, and that is like a section of text that should never be reordering. It never makes any sense. So you want to kind of treat that as a unit. So it's going to be interesting to see how that's kind of handled in the long term. If you're going to be able to like select multiple blocks and move them as a bulk.
I think I'm still presenting to everyone, Keith. I don't think they can see you.
Hello. Cool. Okay.
What's next?
Johnny. I think it's Johnny. Someone at Wider. He says the embeds are cool, but geez, could they make that list any bigger? Simple UI improvements. Yeah, I agree. There are UI improvements that could be made and probably will be made.
I find that kind of strange because at the moment, it's kind of a step too far. Well, it's an extra step, isn't it? Because you have to click on I want to add a block, and then you have to click on I want to add an embed, and then you have to actually choose the embed that you want to use. Whereas now you kind of just paste the link. Yeah,
I think it's a more complicated UI. I wonder if you just paste in a YouTube link, will it automatically turn into? I bet it does.
In a paragraph, probably. Yeah,
I bet it does. Yeah,
maybe. Yeah. So it is quite long. But then I don't know how they, because I suppose if you've got a link from, I don't know, let's use Instagram, you might not know that you can actually embed that, but having it on a list that says you can embed these services kind of might help some people. And if you know that you just want to paste an Instagram link and it'll turn into the Instagram post, then I guess it's kind of a step that you don't need. But then, like you say, if you just paste one anyway and it works, then maybe that's a solution. If you had a paragraph block, paste the link in, does it get converted into an embed block? I wonder.
Yeah, good.
That would be quite cool.
Yeah, that would be cool. Let's whiz down these questions. Ben Furphy, hi Ben. Have you found a way of deleting multiple blocks at once? Yes. Just shift click multiple blocks and then hit delete. Works. Just test it.
You can also delete alt blocks by Command A, can't you? Or Control and A, select all.
Well,
delete.
No.
Oh, you can't, can you?
Remember. Oh no, you can. Sorry, but you have to be outside a block. Yes, you're right. Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
If you're already clicked into a block, Command A just selects the content of that block. Yeah. Johnny, again, is there a collapse block option? Not that I've seen.
That would be really good.
I think it's going to be probably essential. But then I'm sure there's going to be ways to build that yourself.
Yeah,
but
it's JavaScript, isn't it? So you can just essentially look into any block class, I guess, and add a collapse option, maybe. But yeah, it probably wouldn't be that hard to do. But
yeah. Frogabite asks, how would content that is set to 3 columns look on smaller screens? Would they stack by default? Nope. We tested this earlier and it's awful. So if you add column content and then scale it down, it stays in 3 columns, 4 columns, 5 columns, 6 columns. So on mobile, it's a total disaster. So
in the test we did, we were just using 2017 theme, and it appears that Gutenberg enqueues a style sheet. So it loads a style sheet on your front end.
Yeah.
But that, for some reason, doesn't style it on a smaller screen. But what you could do, obviously, is you could just unhook that style sheet and just add your own for your theme, for your site, and then style it yourself.
The whole thing for developers is going to be very, very customizable if you're familiar with the technologies that it's built on. So, I guess that's one of the points. What's the next one? I'm guessing hide options for blocks to prevent users from messing up a design. Yes, I don't know how easy that's going to be. Again, you're going to probably need to know. You're going to need to know the technologies, like you're going to need to know React, JavaScript, all that stuff, and basically how Gutenberg is put together.
Yeah, and I know you can using code you can unhook, so you can there's a. Without getting too technical, there's a function called register block, and I think there's also you can use like an unregistered block, and it will take one away. Whether you can do that for this post type but not that post type, I don't know. I assume you can.
I think it's more, Mark, like, for example, the font size option for paragraphs.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing that we'd want to probably remove, because if
Yeah.
you're designing if you're trying to design like a website that is robust in the sense of it meets the design guidelines, and like editors can't just go in and make pages look however they want, then you probably want to remove a lot of the styling controls. Again, it is going to be possible. We're not exactly sure how yet. But,
yeah.
You could probably just deregister the block and add a new one without that feature.
I suppose that's another point, isn't it? It's all this is built in JavaScript. It's not built in PHP like we're probably used to using.
Yes.
And therefore, that's the challenge for us developers, probably, that we kind of have to do things differently, which is...
Yeah. Angie wants to see what it looks like on the front end, so probably now is a good time to do that.
Yep.
I will share my screen again. Which screen? Screen 2. So here is our test post that I was working with earlier. Yeah, that's the content we added. And here is what that looks like.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah,
it's pretty good. That's I'm just going to do a little. I'm going to squish it, see what happens. That's pretty nice.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I like that. But I will show you while we're here, I may as well show you the multi-column nonsense. Text columns.
Can you not just convert that block into text columns?
Oh, probably can't I?
Try
How do I
it,
just
go on.
delete this? Go away block. Ah! Remove.
There you go.
So convert this one.
It's gone.
Oh, that's a classic. That's already a classic.
Convert to blocks. That do. Oh, there you go. Top left.
No. Interesting. That's Okay. This is a work in progress. Let's just caveat everything with this is a work in progress. So I'm just going to dump in some text. This is another thing. I wasn't a massive fan of the way they did this, but then I guess it gives you a lot more control to be able to specifically define what goes in which column rather than leaving it up to CSS. Why is that?
2 clicks, probably.
I must have been. Anyway. I think was I on a preview or something?
Yeah, you were, I think.
Ta-da! 2 columns. Squish, 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 squish. Still 2 columns. So yeah, not ideal. You can imagine 3, 4 columns, and that is going to be pretty tragic. So yeah. What else was there to demo? I'm sure there was some.
Have you still got that ACF example or not?
Don't. I could probably fairly. Let me just see if I've got it. Still got it in plugin.
I think
activate it.
Wide have asked again, like our experience with flexible content and stuff, but we kind of haven't got that far, have we, with flexible content yet? But I think what I will say is that I know ACF, Advanced Custom Fields, this is a plugin that allows you to add different experiences in terms of like editing content at the moment. They are actively now developing a Gutenberg version of their plugin. So it might well be that we can carry on using Advanced Custom Fields, but we just need to re-register all our fields because, or maybe not, maybe they'll have a way to migrate the ones you've got to Gutenberg.
Oh, this isn't ACF Pro, so I can't test out the repeaters and stuff and flexible content. I'll just move to trash. I'll just go back and yep, I'm sure. I've added those in, so if I just go back to my post, I should be able to see. I wonder if they're going to keep calling it Gutenberg. Like, see on that last page where I'll just go back to that post page. It has Gutenberg beside it, and it has this kind of Gutenberger classic. Like, is Gutenberg just going to hang around as the name forever? It just seems, I don't know. I think almost we've become too attached to this name. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just, I don't know. Anyway, what was I going to demo? Advanced Custom Fields. There we go. So as you can see, there's a really obvious custom fields section at the bottom of the page. And these are actually 2 different field groups. You only know that because of this very thin line. And you don't know what they are because they don't have a title, in the sense that if I go back to my custom fields page, so I've called this one person data. It's a name and a phone number. I would expect above name it would say person data, but it doesn't.
This is what we were discussing before about the fact that the page has changed. Like probably Advanced Custom Fields there's nowhere to put that title because the page has changed.
Yeah.
But yeah, it kind of works, but it just doesn't look very good.
Mark, I've got a question for you.
Oh no! Oh no!
So we've obviously got a lot of clients and stuff that use this kind of ACF and flexible content and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
If we had a post type, for example, that uses the regular content first, and then underneath the regular content, it outputs these flexible content blocks.
Yeah.
If we switch to Gutenberg without doing any kind of theme development, does the content, as in the underscore content function, output whatever is in Gutenberg? Is that how it works?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
It's just straight up just works like that. So the content just becomes whatever has been added via Gutenberg.
Yeah, that's right, and that's how you'll output it as a theme developer or something. It's just the content, and then the content spits out all of that stuff you've added in Gutenberg.
Yeah,
which has its own markup.
Sorry, Matt has asked me to input something and click save. That's a really good idea. We spinny thing, something's happening.
Spinny.
Obviously, this isn't going to output anything on the front end because I haven't changed the template, but it did save.
Yeah.
So if that's just what we're testing,
just refresh the page.
Yeah, good point, because that was
that's just well, it says it saved.
No, that is a good point though.
It should have, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Back to some questions, I think.
Yeah, we'll get to.
Should I keep the demo? I'll keep that screen. I'll stop presenting.
Dan says, I'm really interested to know how Gutenberg is going to work with advanced custom fields. It's a huge part of my current workflow. Yep, same with us. It's obviously you've seen a bit of a demo there of how it's going to work. So it's not perfect, but like I said, I think ACF will change as well, and I know they're actively doing stuff to get that better. A lot of plugin authors are doing the same thing. I noticed yesterday that the team from Rocket Genius, that's Gravity Forms, they tweeted out a link saying, look, we're working on a Gutenberg integration for forms, so you can add forms into the Gutenberg editor. So I think you'll find a lot of plugin authors are kind of in that stage now as to what they do.
Yeah.
Do they make those changes? And probably they are doing that at the moment.
Yeah. I think the next question, Davina, how do you create a staging site?
Yeah, good question.
Quick one for you, Mark, maybe.
The easiest answer is your host will probably give you one. So most like WordPress hosts these days literally just have a button that says make me a staging site, and then it'll probably exist at like staging.domain.com. Other than that, it's probably a bit too complex to actually answer on here. It's kind of, you need to create a new website and so on. But yeah, most decent WordPress hosts these days will give you a button, literally a button that you just press, and it'll create you a staging site, which you can then just play around with because it's not your live site. So that will probably be my suggestion, is that you're using a decent WordPress dedicated host.
Yep. Angie, can the classic editor be installed before WordPress version 5? Yes.
Yes, and that's probably a good idea, actually, Angie. If you don't want Gutenberg, you don't want it yet.
So before you go on holiday, and I noticed you said you were going skiing in April. So before you go skiing, maybe install that. But remember, it's not just installing it. There are some settings that you need to make sure that you enable. So make sure you do that. Jason, we're about to start design dev of a new WordPress site. Launch date March, April. Should we? This is a brilliant question.
Yeah, it is.
So basically, Jason's asking, I'm about to start building a website. Should we be building it in Gutenberg? I guess what we would say no, because we're also starting to build something and we're not building it in Gutenberg. It's not ready. It's not finished.
Yeah, that's my worry about it. It's not ready. It's not finished. So therefore, if you build, you might spend a lot of time building something that either gets taken out of Gutenberg and that then doesn't work. It's probably not that likely at the moment. It's probably at a stage where it's not going to radically change.
Yeah.
But there is always that possibility because it's not finished. It's not, it's not ready for emerging to core. So we have taken the state that we're not going to build them in Gutenberg for a while yet. How long a while is, we don't know. And also, we don't feel like we can build them in Gutenberg really at the moment because we don't have that JavaScript skill set to be able to do that. We know JavaScript and we can use it, but we're not really.
Well, we don't know React.
No, we don't know React, so we're not in that position yet to sort of say, well, actually, I will build it. Because actually, if we did, that's fine. We can just learn it, but that would take 3 times as long to build that site than it would do normally. So
there's also some big questions around development. I think that this webinar is primarily for like website owners, so I don't want to get too geeky about it. But if you're developing a block and you change the markup of that block, the way the blocks are saved in HTML comments means that as soon as you change the markup, so say you want to change a heading within your block to an H4 instead of an H3, as soon as you go to edit that page again, you're going to get that cryptic pop-up which asks you, like, saying that like the block has changed. Do you want to do X, Y, and Z? And none of the options it gives you are actually probably what you want. So that's something, because obviously when you're developing, you need to be testing these things, and you're going to be changing things constantly. So we need to figure that out.
When I created my first block, it was really frustrating because you added a block in the post editor and you added all your text on it. I think I was doing like a person block, so you added the name and then the description and bio and stuff.
Yeah.
And then every time you make a change to your code, like to develop on it, that message comes up basically, and you either convert it to a classic block, which then I can't actually test my block that I'm building, or you've got to delete it and start again, which is just really frustrating. But maybe that makes me doing it wrong. I don't know. But
we've got a very leading question from Ben Furphy. Do you think that Gutenberg is a sign that WordPress isn't interested in business users anymore, that their focus is now entirely on DIY users? Well, do you think?
It depends what you mean by WordPress. Like, who is WordPress, I guess?
Well, I guess that's sort of the question, though, isn't it? Like, who is it for? Is it still for business users? From my point of view, the Gutenberg is going to give us some tools and some flexibility that we don't really currently have. Like, you could build some really amazing admin interfaces with it, but I think the DIY market is what this is aimed at. I really do. But who's to know, really? Like I said, a bit of a leading question. I think Ben has an obvious opinion on that himself. I'm a little bit worried about it from that point of view, that it becomes possibly less business friendly. But then I don't know. Maybe it's just going to take a bit of getting used to, and it's actually going to give us way more possibilities. So is that fair enough, Mark? Anything more to add on that? Difficult one to answer.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
The next question was about ACF, which we kind of covered. No Face, are you excited for Gutenberg? I'm aware there's a clear 50-50 split. No, I'm probably leaning on the worried side of the fence. Like I said, I don't hate the interface, and I think it's going to improve. But from a developer's point of view, it currently makes things harder than the tools we currently have. So I don't really know why it's an improvement for us as a development company over using something like ACF, because essentially it is creating flexible content. It's probably a slightly nicer user interface for doing that, but it's much, much harder to build blocks in Gutenberg than it is normal meta boxes or using something like ACF.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think it's... but maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that it's time we moved over to this new way of doing it. You can't have things the same forever, can you? I guess, but I can't see why they're better at the moment. That's my only thing. But maybe someone will be able to tell me.
Yeah.
I think if you're running your own blog, and you've just got a blog, then why wouldn't it be a good thing that you can do all this stuff that you couldn't do before? I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think so. But yeah, for us. For example, we're rebuilding our own website, and we're thinking, well, we should use Gutenberg, shouldn't we? I mean, it's obvious. Just doing the simplest things that would take us 5 minutes today to add a new meta box. It's just so much harder. There's so much more code to write. So yeah. Right now it's not, it's not for us in a way, but we're gonna have to get there.
So I think to answer the question for me is, do I fear or do I love it? I think I'm like Keith. I'm more on the worried side of things. But then I think that's normal. I think because it's a change, isn't it? So I think I really want to like it. I do. I really want to like it. I mean, I'm not a massive fan of the actual editing experience with things hovering all the time. And someone mentioned, I can't remember if it was like, can we collapse blocks? Well, that would be really helpful because it would get that stuff out of the way on the screen.
But then what would it show?
I don't know.
Title, just the title of, I don't know. Like if it's a gallery, what's it going to show?
And I'm a firm believer that actually the editing experience of the content shouldn't necessarily look like what you see on the front end, because it should be optimized for editing the content, not for viewing it and consuming it.
Yeah.
And what Gutenberg seems to be doing is try to make the editing experience as similar as it can to the actual what you see as a website.
But that's gonna come down to how people develop for it, because we know, Mark, that we don't have to make the admin UI look like the front end.
Yeah,
we've got full control over that, and actually that's something Gutenberg kind of does allow us to do, is to craft probably better admin UIs potentially.
Yeah. But then you look back at that quote at the very start of this session, and the idea was to get rid of all the hacky ways of people doing things.
Yeah.
But if everyone does it differently in Gutenberg, you're not going to do that, are you? So
no. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yep.
Anyway.
Johnny asked, can you inspect output and touch upon thoughts on output classes, etc.? I think
core blocks, then they will add some classes. I noticed that the gallery one add some classes. But obviously for blocks, you register yourself and you've got full control on the output anyway.
Yeah, so inspect output, yeah, sure. Right, okay, let's have a look. Screen share.
Are you sharing?
I am attempting to. So I don't know what exactly you want to see, Johnny, but
we're assuming it's Johnny. It might not be.
It is. I asked earlier, and he said it
was.
Right. So we've got. Should we go to a more interesting block? Well, I think the column one's kind of interesting. So
WP block column.
We've got a div.
So wrapper. Yeah.
We've got columns within those.
Align undefined.
You can see here the CSS. I'll just hover over that, so you can see that is coming from the Gutenberg plugin. That particular CSS to handle those columns.
You may well want to unhook that, unenqueue it, and just use your website style sheet to style sheet to do that job.
Yeah. So I'm just going to close that. The paragraph isn't wrapped in anything. Let's have a look for the gallery. See what that looks like. So there's the inline, just as a kind of aside. There's that's a kind of more interesting one, I guess. So there's a paragraph. It's just a paragraph. The font size is an inline style, and that has a class of has drop cap. And I'm assuming the has drop cap is coming from Gutenberg as well. Yep, it is. Yeah. So I hope that helps.
But I know that each block has a custom class option. So I don't know if you can quickly edit that post. Every block has the option to add a custom class to it. So on the block section at the bottom there you can put your own classes on it there.
Yeah, sorry.
Which is quite
am I presenting?
Yeah, I can see it.
No.
Sorry,
you're flicking back and forth there. So yeah, so I've just, if I click on any block here, it says add additional CSS class. So we've got a bit of control over that. If you want to, add something custom. I think we should probably wrap up.
Yep, I agree.
So thank you very, very, very much for joining us today. It was brilliant that we weren't just talking to each other.
Yeah, it was good.
Let me stop screen sharing. So that was really cool. Hopefully you got something from it. The video will be available on our channel. We're going to email everybody that was on the list. with a link to it, maybe some kind of follow-up stuff. Obviously, like a little small plug again for our mailing list. If you're interested in kind of keeping up with things, we are going to be blogging and potentially doing more things like this in and around Gutenberg and other WordPress management related things.
Yep.
So that's just highrise.digital/subscribe. And then, yeah, if you enjoyed this and you think it was useful and you know anybody else that might get benefit from watching it, please share the video on Twitter, Facebook, whatever. Email it to people. That'd be super. But yeah, thanks again. Anything else, Mark? Just to round it up? Or
that's great. Thank you very much for joining us.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy your lunch. Enjoy your weekend, and hopefully see you sometime soon.
See you later.
Thanks, everyone.